It is that time once again. It's the time that you all look forward to. It's the time that makes your pathetic little lives worthwhile. And that's visiting us, Clive Davis, and
Ron, how's it going? Just
in the
Ron.
magic morning wood, with the hopes that our super coolness might rub off on you. Unlikely, you pathetic mortals, but you can but dream to be as awesome as us talking about films and shit. So, algorithm machine.
Nice intro. Nice intro. Yeah.
Thanks, man. I've spent
Yeah.
a few hours
You've been working on that one?
Yeah, yeah. So we talked about oh yes, of course, your new favorite film, Kings of the Road.
Kings of the Road, yes.
Yes. If
Now, I did want to say just before we jump in that
okay.
I reflected a little bit on
Oh,
that
oh.
episode, and I'm not saying that I liked it anymore, but I think I was a little too hard on the genre. I think I was just in a bad mood, I think, when I watched it, and it just put me in an increasingly bad mood. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that all road movies are shit. I mean, I can't. That's a pretty blanket statement to say. So I think I was.
Okay. I'm just waiting. Are you gonna pan the camera across and we see your freshly minted Kings of the Road poster on the wall?
Okay, right here. Yeah. On the ceiling, so I can.
Right.
But I don't know. But so I mean, I still didn't really like that movie very much, and I definitely thought it was overdone. But I think I was misspeaking by saying that the whole genre is that it's that it's shit. So I do want to say that there are things to be seen in the genre. I just think it. I mean, as we'll talk about today, I chose a road movie to talk about this week, and I think it's anyway. Well, I'll wait till I get there,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, okay, but it was interesting though because it did seem at the time when you did say that the road movies was one of your most loathed genres. It didn't actually necessarily seem like a knee-jerk reaction to the road. It sounded as if it was something you had given thought to in the past.
I think it was something that I hadn't thought of or realized until watching that movie, and I was like, oh, you know what? I actually don't really like these types of movies, right? So in general, and I think it was just sort of like a really dark mood from that movie and just being bored to tears and thinking like, these fucking movies. Yeah, I can think of like a couple of movies like this, which we also come off of like it was a reaction to like the what was it, the Wild Into the Wild,
Yeah.
Yeah, Into the Wild, which was also kind of like kind of like and the meandering-ish kind of irritated me of both of those movies, right? So yeah, so but I think the one that I chose, I mean, we'll get to it later, which is I think I like this one a lot more for other reasons. So, but we'll wait till we get there. So.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that. But first, we'll do my choice. I went via cinematography, Robbie Mueller, and just because I saw it on, he's dead now, but I saw it on his list, and I thought, that's a film that I've always really wanted to talk to Ron about. Even though, in terms of the Robbie Mueller-ness of it, I'm not sure if this is exactly a great kind of typical example of, even though Robbie Mueller had, one of the things I like about Robbie Mueller is not only is he a great cinematographer, but also he could do a lot of different things. Like some great cinematographers do one look very well, right? But you compare like Kings of the Road to this kind of more handheldy kind of thing, and there's other films like Repo Man, and there's a lot of variety in his filmography. But he was just really top notch. But I don't know if this film is necessarily. I mean, the work's good. It matches the material, but I'm not sure if the film in question, 24-Hour Party People, is. I'm not sure if cinematography is high on the list of things you watch this film for.
Right.
If you see what I mean.
Well, I think the cinematography was appropriate to the subject matter.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that's another reason to like Robbie Mueller as well. Is, I mean, you can imagine some cinematographers like just being offered a job like this and just turning it down because they're not interested in trying something new or stretching their, because so this is from 2001 as well, right? So this type of filmmaking was still, people were still kind of finding their way of doing it, right? I think there's a lot of stuff that looks like this now, right? That has this kind of mix of almost like a docudrama look, but it looks very kind of polished. I think back in 2001, I think people like Robbie Mueller and whoever Lars von Trier's cinematographers, I think they were still working on doing this kind of thing well, right? Also considering, yeah, we'll get to this when you get to your choice as well, actually. But yeah, to think that this film is now 23 years old makes me feel very old, indeed, right? So first off out the gate, had you seen 24-Hour Party People before?
No, I hadn't.
Okay.
It was on my radar, and I remember seeing like the DVD case or the video case cover in my local video store, but it was something I never got to.
Right. And of course I think it's the first of the Michael Winterbottom, Steve Coogan collaborations, which we have spoken about before, right? We've done a Cockable story, we did the Trips, and we've talked more broadly about Steve Coogan as well.
And also I guess this is probably one of the first ones that he's with Rob Brydon as well.
Yes, yeah, it was funny to see him turn up. You can see the kind of, I mean, I think him and Steve Coogan had certainly been working together for a while. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see the germs of that kind of, So basically, 24-Hour Party People is basically the story of Factory Records, right? And Factory Records founder, Tony Wilson, as played by Steve Coogan. Interestingly as well, so Steve Coogan's most famous creation, Alan Partridge, right? Started life as a Tony Wilson impersonation.
Okay, yeah.
So,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, because he was a regional, he was the Granada TV presenter who you would have seen on local television, but at the same time he had this kind of ambition to be, like the Andy Warhol of Manchester or something like that, right?
Sure, yeah.
And he was one of the first people to really seize on like punk and stuff and trying to bring it to the TV screens and stuff like that. So he's kind of an interesting character, like one of those guys, like you'd make fun of him, like a cool dad kind of guy, but at the same time he kind of did a lot of good as well. So he's one of those kind of ambivalent kind of. I was looking at the IMDb trivia. The first bit of IMDb trivia.
I know exactly. I was going to mention this.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it was about it
was Bernard Hook, right? From
Peter Hook, right? From New Order, right? So, and he mentioned that he said he described the film as a film about the biggest cunt in Manchester, played by the second biggest.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, but I actually had a question about that specifically. That interesting that you brought that up because, well, first of all, was he an asshole? Because it seems like he was generally kind of, even though he was kind of made fun of a little bit, he was almost like a good-natured ribbing but everyone seemed to really kind of appreciate what he did for them.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you take the use of the word cunt, right? I think cunt is thrown around a little bit more.
How does Peter Hook mean it? I mean,
well, again, the other thing you have to temper it with, I know lots of people who would probably refer to Peter Hook as a massive cunt as well, right? So,
yeah.
So well, he's unreliable.
You would probably have to be one to have a quote like that.
Right? Yeah. But then there's a certain amount of trolling there as well.
Yeah. But my other question is like, is Steve Coogan also kind of an asshole?
I mean, I think over the years, I've certainly heard, rumors of him sometimes, especially when he was at the peak of his stuff. It's the character that he makes fun of in the Trip movies a bit, right? It's the guy who,
but he seems he's again with the Trip, he strikes me as too self-aware to actually be an asshole. Do
Yeah,
you know
but,
what I mean? Like,
but then again, I think it's very few and far, because you have to remember just how big he was in the 90s, like, and plus in the middle of the whole Britpop going off explosion thing as well. Like, I think there are very few men in that position who wouldn't take advantage of it a little bit and have their cunty asshole moments, right? And have their
right.
diva moments. And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I suspect he's probably aged out of it now. But yeah,
Okay.
I'm sure he had his cunty moments, let's put it that way.
So do you think, I mean, I can't tell based on that quote. Do you think Peter Hook likes or liked the two of them or dislikes them
I think he probably comes down more favorable than he.
favorably? So it's
Yeah,
more like a good natured, like
I
a
think
one
so.
caution the boys kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, I
Yeah,
reckon.
okay.
But you never know. I mean, it's difficult to tell, right? I mean,
Right, sure.
um,
Because, I mean, you could read that like totally two ends of the spectrum with that
yeah. Well, I
same
think that's
quote,
the
right?
idea as well, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I'm not
So
sure.
I'm just curious if you knew more about the context that that was said in, but
No, not
yeah.
really. So yeah, so it's basically the story of Factory Records at specifically Joy Division becoming New Order, and then Happy Mondays, and you get little bits of other things. Certain Ratio are in there, and Durity Column, and there's lots of little call outs to, and of course the Hacienda as well, right? The Hacienda and drug culture and ecstasy, and yeah. So I don't know how. So this is what I was hoping a little bit to counterbalance. So um, I've always had a little bit of a problem with this. I've never, how can I say, I've never quite been able to get my hat on about this film. Let's put it that way. So I've seen it several times over the years, and I've always kind of enjoyed it or enjoyed elements of it, but I've always had a slight disconnect with, like, you have your like your objective critic's hat and your subjective hat, right? And I've never been able to reconcile if this works outside of a certain demographic. So it'll be interesting. How much do you know about Factory Records and Joy Division?
Almost nothing. Yeah.
Okay, that's good then. So maybe you'll be able to answer these questions for me, right? So
Yeah, like I didn't know who any of these people were, with the
okay,
exception of I mean, I know of Joy Division and New Order, but
right,
other than their few hits, I don't really listen
right,
to that kind of music either. So it's, and
okay.
I'd never heard of the Happy Monday, so that was the first time.
Interesting. Okay.
Never heard of them. Yeah, so
So I to put this into context, I'll choose one example, right? So for instance, there's they do the whole famous Lesser Free Trade Hall Sex Pistols gig, which apparently everyone claims they were at, and they all went
yeah.
on and formed bands and everything afterwards. And I'm wondering, so this is the question. So there's a character, it's a real life guy, John the Postman. And if you remember this, there's a guy who
Yeah,
basically
he was just
invades
a
the
postman.
state. Huh?
Didn't he say he's just a postman?
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah,
he's the guy who invades the stage and
mm.
starts singing Louis Louis, right?
Yeah, right, yeah,
And
yeah.
we see it like twice, maybe. So I
Mm.
was just wondering, did you get from that John the Postman was famous for stage invasions at the end of gigs and doing his version of Louis Louis? Did you?
No.
Yes.
But they did bring it back again at the end of the movie. There was like a,
They did,
yeah,
but
yeah,
they
but I didn't
didn't.
know necessarily
Yeah,
that was the same guy. Yeah, I didn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. I knew this because I know who John the Postman is, right? And it
Okay.
gave me a laugh to for them to reference it. But at the same time, I was thinking, yeah, I'm wondering if, for instance, if Ron would pick up on this, and the thing is, there's a lot of stuff in that, and I'm not a man who likes things spoon fed to me, and I likes things over egg. But the thing is, in this case, it only requires an extra line. It
Sure.
only
Yeah.
requires
Yeah.
Tony Wilson saying he was famous for doing
Doing that.
and it doesn't
Yeah,
take
sure,
anything
yeah.
away from it. But
Yeah.
they don't do it, right? So on the one hand, there's a lot of a lot of in jokes in this
Yeah,
film.
yes.
And maybe some of them I didn't even spot, but a lot of them I did, and they kind of made me smile and laugh. But at the same time, I was thinking, well, this film's kind of made for me to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, what about everyone else? And I'm not sure if it works. So this time though, I just went with my gut, and I thoroughly enjoyed it as an experience for me. Like this time, I was finally like, yeah, okay, fuck it, because I don't know why I'm worrying about this, because plenty of other people like this film as well. It was a big critical success, and
Sure.
so so I'm finally on board. Yes, I do like 24 Hour to Prepare. It was a really good film, but I do wonder if how it plays for like for you, for example. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely. I was even saying this to myself as I was watching it. It is a British movie for British people, right? So like, I mean, and that says like it's. I mean, there's a lot of movies which tend to be kind of. I mean, we were talking about this yesterday with our other podcast about books, where the movie L.A. Story.
Right.
There was a Steve Martin movie called L.A. Story, which he wrote and starred in and directed it, I think. And he and so we were talking about that movie yesterday. And I remember watching that movie right around the same time I was watching this movie, and it was the same thing, which is that the movie is so full of in jokes for a very select group of people, right? And it's a very, very small. And sure, there's other things that other people can appreciate, or they can appreciate. Or they might get that it is a joke. How do I put this? Like when I'm like, there's like, for example, in LA Story, I can't think of a specific example, but he's making a joke about, you know, LA people or the LA lifestyle, or here's an example. There's one part where he asks the girl out on a date, and in the movie, and she says, "Oh, let's go for a walk," and he goes, "Walking in LA."
Right.
It's just hilarious, right? And so to LA people, I'm sure that is hilarious. But to people who don't live in LA, but only kind of tangentially or kind of peripherally know about LA, that you know that everyone drives in LA, you get that it's a joke, but it's not a joke for me.
Right. Yes.
You know what I mean? I can identify it as a joke, and I can identify the beats of the joke, but I can't appreciate the joke as someone who lives in LA,
haven't
right?
had that personal experience. Yeah,
exactly.
Like I know that LA is fucking bumper to bumper fucking gridiron. But if you make a specific joke about how long it takes to get from this place to that place, I have no idea.
Exactly. There's no frame of reference, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same with this movie. I mean, and at least with the LA Story, I can kind of like, a lot of them are sort of like, I can understand the context. A lot of this, again, I don't even know what was going on half the time. Like I didn't know who these people were. I didn't know what was happening. So it was so specific, and you know, and a lot of them I could say, okay, I can tell that's a joke, but interestingly, what it does is it sort of sometimes it and I guess this speaks well of the movie, is that it inspires me to find out more.
Okay, so it didn't alienate you then.
It doesn't necessarily completely. Sometimes I've got like, I don't know what the fuck's happening. I don't know what they're talking about or who these people are. But sometimes I'm like, oh, well, what does that mean? Like where? So it inspires me sometimes to kind of dive a little deeper to find out what the context of that joke or that situation or that reference was. And so, which I mean, speaks, you know, that maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be a broad audience, right? When it's about a very niche subject, I mean, the point is to make it niche, right? I mean, that's the point, right? So, I mean, if you take something that's a niche subject and then make it so that everyone understands it, I think you water it down too much, that it's not about what it needs to be about.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Right? Yeah, I think that's what people appreciated about this film, that it didn't go out of its way to explain itself to people who weren't already in on the joke, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah.
So did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it?
I still found enough to enjoy. I mean, of course, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as a person who got all the references would. I think it just goes without saying. I think it's an inevitable kind of fallacy with this type of product, right? Which is like a downfall of when you have a niche subject, you're gonna get people that don't get it, right? So that's sort of. But I think they certainly knew it went in knowing that, right?
Yeah,
And
there's
there was
something to
enough.
be said for sticking to your guns, right? Like,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, yeah,
And I, good for them for that. I appreciate for them for that. And there was enough in this that made me interested in what was happening and what was going on. There was still a lot where I was like, I have no idea what they're
right.
talking about or what's happening, right? So, and especially, but I did like how it was. They also didn't go straight up biopic or straight up.
No, and there's a lot of
It
breaking the
was,
fourth wall and stuff like that.
breaking the
Right?
fourth wall. Like I really like I'd never seen a biopic like that, and also like also calling to attention the fact that there's different memories about certain events, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and
Howard
whether or not, like
Devoto
there's,
sleeping with his wife and stuff.
yeah, so he's
The
just,
real
yeah,
Howard
and
Devoto
then
was like, I don't know
has the real
this.
guy there as the
Yeah,
bathroom cleaner saying
yeah,
like, I'm the real person that was in the story and I don't
yes,
remember doing this, and da, da, da. And I was
yeah,
like, I appreciate that they took the time to
yeah,
show that totally breaking the fourth wall in terms of like creating, putting the real person and saying I'm the real person that's in this, and this didn't happen but someone else says it did happen, and
right.
so I found that really fascinating. It was really
Yeah,
interesting. I've never
yeah.
seen movies do like that before, so
That's
that
good
was
as well.
really
It's not a straight up hagiography, right? As well, it's
hmm,
like it's not everyone comes out of it necessarily really well. I mean, to a point, at some point, like some scenes are like, fuck, I'm surprised they like when so Sean Ellis's Ian Curtis is
hmm,
fantastic. I think like his dancing is
hmm,
just spot fucking on. It's exactly what Ian Curtis looked
yeah,
like. But there's like a scene where he has an epileptic fit, and
hmm.
Peter Hook's like, rummaging through his trousers to get a cigarette. And I think, wow, okay, fair play. They didn't whitewash this at all, right? Like,
Yeah, sure.
another example of a thing I was wondering that, again, a good example of something you might not have picked up on because it only comes up twice. And I'm wondering, so famously, that I'm blanking on his name shamefully because he considered one of the great kind of graphic designers in the music industry. But
Oh
guy,
yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
the guy who does all the posters and the everything, his stuff is like,
Rob Gretton.
yeah, it might be, yeah, yeah.
Rob Gretton,
But
yeah,
his
that was
character
Patty
turns up,
Considine, right?
yeah. So his character turns up a couple of times, like
Hmm.
once when he's designed the poster for the event, after the event's already been. And then another time, and and they're very quick scene. He turns up with the tickets, and someone says, "Well, they're no fucking use now because they've already sold the thing or whatever." And this is the thing that he was actually famous for this. Like he was famous for like laboring over and being such a perfectionist. Nothing was ever. It was always too
It was
late.
always too late. It was too late.
But the work was so good. They were
Huh.
like, "Well, this is awesome stuff," and it did become iconic. Whatever. But again, I don't necessarily know if you'd get that joke just from the too brief.
Yeah, sure, I did.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even like the Louis stuff, that
Yeah, John the
the
Postman. Yeah.
postman guy. I mean, I just thought that that was something that people did in this era. Louis was such a famous song
Right.
that it was just like a go to for all of this kind of
No, no,
Arab
that
musician,
was
that they would just break out into
yeah,
Louis refrains, right?
that was
So
John the Basically, if you had a gig in Manchester at this point, John the Postman would turn up and invade the stage and sing Louis Louis at the end. So
was he like neurodivergent or something, or he just
I don't know much about John the Postman other than
yeah?
that, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it captured for posterity on some live album. But and yeah, so we should mention this. Yeah, as usual with the Winterbottom Steve Coogan films, there's a whole shitload of people in this, right? Don
Yeah.
Johnson, Lenny James, Christopher Eccleston as a
Yeah.
homeless philosopher
Oh
guy,
yeah, you don't even see his face. You don't
right?
really you don't see his or his voice.
Andy Serkis is really good as
No.
Martin Hanna, right?
Yeah, was that makeup or did he actually gain that much weight?
I don't know. It's difficult to tell with Andy Serkis, right?
Yeah. Sandy Circus goes all
Because
out, right? So
didn't we do we did do Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll on the show, right? When we
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um and whole loads, and lots of people playing themselves. The late Mackie Smith is in there.
Constantine,
Yeah. People
what's his name? Didn't Simon Pegg
yeah,
shows up as a
yeah, yeah. Who's
journalist.
basically I think playing Paul Morley, I think, but they don't
Uh,
match and he's just
that's right.
journalist, but I'm pretty sure he's Paul Morley. Yeah, and people and the other thing I noticed this time as well was
And
really
some of
good.
the real actual musicians actually too
Yes,
throughout,
yeah.
right?
And I
Yeah.
think also what it did this time, especially when it got into the Happy Mondays stuff, was I think what it did, because I would imagine for a younger audience who don't remember this stuff when it was new or whatever, or who weren't there, or you know, were not into the music or whatever, I can imagine the whole Manchester baggy scene is a little bit like, what the you know, have you been to Manchester? It's like, why was Manchester cool all of a sudden, right? But it does a really good job, I think, of kind of capturing why it was, right? Like
My,
Hacienda.
my guess is that it was sort of like Seattle before Seattle.
Yeah,
It
there's
was
a
like
little bit of
it
that.
was like the British Seattle of the 70s, right? You know, so like 70s and 80s, right? Which
Yeah,
is
well, also specifically, I think it's that kind of the Happy Mondays epitomized. Well, there's a reason. I think there's a reason they chose to call the film 24-hour Party People, right? Because it is that kind of, it's that very no hope fucking working class, but somehow you manage to keep the party going, right? You like
yeah,
you don't have a job, you don't have any prospects or anything, but you look into this, and there's talent as well, obviously. But basically, you just party like there's no fucking tomorrow, and that's what became cool. It was that kind of slightly wide, but all right, kid, yeah, all right, kid, you know, if I get, you know, it was that kind of thing, and it was cool for a while until it became annoying, and then I suppose like the end game is it's Oasis. Right? It's
right.
basically it's funny as well. There's not much Stone Roses in it, but
Are they Manchester Oasis?
yeah, oh yeah, oh
They
yeah.
were okay. Yeah, okay.
So
Wasn't
that
sure.
kind of yeah, they became the kind of yeah when the really cool stuff had happened and gone down and the joke had got old, then the fucking Gallagher's come along and do this kind of really super concentrated kind of contrived version of it, like all right, born and all that, and you're thinking, fuck, these are like cartoon characters or something, you know. The but the film kind of takes you back, and it kind of you understand why it was fresh and exciting to a certain extent, right? I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I wasn't even aware of this whole kind of, I mean, I of this whole kind of scene, and I never heard the term Manchester. That's how little I
Okay.
knew about it, right? So, I thought it was like a typo on like on IMDb. I was like, so yeah, but it was interesting to learn about, and yeah, definitely I like to learn about these kind of like pockets of history, you know, especially when I'm, you know, at least peripherally interested in this kind of stuff, right? Like I did like post and you know, punk and post punk and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
so I was interested. It made me kind of interested to find more about it. So
yeah.
maybe I'll watch like a real documentary.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it also reminded me as well, like a few things, because a lot of this stuff I was into, I haven't listened to it. It just reminded me, like, what a fucking amazing record Love Will Tear Us Apart is.
Yeah.
Just stunning, stunning piece of work, right? And it's got some proper good laughs in it as well. Some good. There's like, I love the bit in the car, and they're talking. So they changed the name from Warsaw to Joy Division, right? And do you know what that is? Do you know what it is, Wilson? Yeah, yeah. And it's the you know, it's the forced prostitutes who are you know, forced to you know, to service the SS or whatever.
Right. Mhm.
Joy Division. So you know, it's quite, you know, grim Nazi. Yeah, but you know, it's quite cheerful as well. I thought that was quite a good. Yeah. And it is, I guess, yes, Joy
Yeah.
Division. I think a lot of people don't actually realize what the
I
reference
didn't know that
is.
until you said it. Yeah, so
Right.
I didn't know that. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting that we both seem to have actually um, enjoyed it, right? But coming at it from very different.
Yeah, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as people get the joke. There's still a lot of it. I was like, I kind of don't know what's happening now. And it was a little, and it seemed to, I mean, just, I liked the handhold held kind of like guerrilla feel of it all, kind of that it was all kind of happening in the moment and stuff. I did feel like it kind of ran out of steam a little bit by the end, that it was kind of like, it kind of didn't know how to end
it's
it and stuff.
it's
And
not
I didn't
necessarily the
know.
greatest ending in the
Yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah. And
No.
also, I wasn't. I mean, would you like to ask your opinion about all the alien stuff? Like, what was that stuff all about?
Yeah, well, again, I think that was just as reported by
No. And like seeing
Paul and
himself
Sean Ryder.
blood and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, was that just like a drug? Like that was like he thought that happened, or was this like a? I assumed it was like a something that the filmmakers made up as like a storytelling device, whatever.
No,
But I didn't
I
really
think
get.
it's something that Sean Ryder did believe happened to him, right? So I think they just
Okay.
kind of pulled it in. No, I agree with you. It's slightly they slightly overextend that a little bit. Like
Yeah,
I
it
think it
didn't
might be
right. It
potentially.
felt a little bit out of place. You know, I
Yes.
mean, yes, I mean, it was sort of like a, breaking the fourth wall and just not going for true realism. But like two or three places, it just suddenly there's aliens, and I was like, well, I didn't. I mean, this sort of like takes any of the wind of the sails out of the rest of the movie, kind of thing, because it's like, well, I mean, there might have been some sort of factual basis for some of this, but then
Yeah.
by adding this stuff in, I was kind of like, well, like what am I supposed to get from that? Like I didn't really get what the point was.
Right. I also like as well though that they did. I mean, they did cherry pick certain stuff. Like there's stuff they could have like. You can imagine if this had gone through a focus group or something, like they would have. Yeah, that's not sympathetic. Like they would have pulled the scene where they poison all the pigeons, for
Oh
example.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
a fucking great scene, but you can see that's not a scene that you can imagine a lot of people like watching and going, "Oh, I don't like these people. I don't want to watch these."
Well, I didn't like. That's why
story."
I felt like I'd never heard of the Happy Mondays, and I was like, who are these fucking guys? Poison prisons, and then they go to like they take all the money and they go to Barbados, and he's like, I'm not gonna have. Why should I fucking bother writing any fucking lyrics? And then they come back and they've got music but no lyrics and stuff, and just pissing all the money. And basically, Factory Workers went under because of them. Basically,
Because
is
they're
what.
having it, Ron. They're having it. They're on one. They're having it. They're getting away
And I
with
was,
it.
but I was kind of like, and people liked these guys. Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I certainly came away disliking them. So
I
I
can
wasn't sure if
I
that's.
can see that. I'm not the world's biggest Happy Mondays fan anyway, but I kind of get it. There's something very encapsulated of that time, that kind of cheeky kind of get away with what you can kind of, you know. I'm not going to say scally because that's Scouse, that's Liverpool, and I'll get beaten up by people from Manchester. But yeah, that kind of yeah. What the fuck you looking at? There's like a classic. There's a bit I quite again a bit of an in joke because it's like it's such an ancient gag. It's the gag where you manipulate the conversation so that the answer is you're a cunt, right? And it's a classic old gag, and there's a million ways around of doing it. Like actually, Mackie Smith, who appeared in this of the Fall, had a good. I remember there's a famous one, him kind of fucking up some kind of record deal where there was some record executive, and he knew exactly what he was doing. He manufactured this conversation, which was like, I'm psychic. I can guess like what your star sign is, and he goes through this whole rigmarole. And of course, the record producer is, oh, what am I? What am I? Yeah, that's your in. You're a cunt. And there's a classic one in here. Paddy Considine was in it, which is mentioned, who's great as well. He gets to do that. I can't remember how, but I just like seeing it. It's kind of like seeing an old gag done well or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's a very Mancunian
Oh,
thing.
okay.
Well.
Again, not something I knew about. Yeah, I appreciate that though, but I didn't know about that. So yeah.
Yeah,
so,
no,
yeah.
Paddy Considine is really good in it. I'm a big fan of Paddy Considine. Yeah.
He's very big these days because he's in the he was in the House of the Dragon. So
he's in that, is he?
Well, he was anyway.
Okay. He's really good. I've always really liked
so good in it. Really, really good.
Yeah,
So if you're so and so he's sort of I think he's finding like a new kind of an I wouldn't say like a new career, but I think he's like blossoming based on that. So I think
he's great. Have you ever seen A Room for Romeo Brass? Which is one of his earlier he's always good, but that's like that's when people first started taking notice of like who's this guy, like what's he doing?
Right, yeah.
And yeah, very diverse. So yeah, hopefully we'll talk some more Paddy Considine at some point in the future.
Sure,
Just
yeah,
make note to self, watch more Paddy Considine films for the show.
Right, sure, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but anyway, it was a good watch. I'm not sure I got as much out of it as other people did, but it was still, I enjoyed it. It was an interesting watch, and I learned something, which is always good. I learned
yeah,
some stuff, and all this inspired me to learn more about something in
yeah, some
that.
great music to discover, and also it sounds as if it's the kind of film that you could potentially sit down with again one day and get a bit
Sure,
out of
yeah,
it
yeah, get
each
more
time.
of it. More you get once I have more
Yeah,
context.
I mean, I've certainly watched it. I've certainly watched it a few times, and I'm glad the I, talking it out with you was that I've been wanting to talk to you about 24 because I for some reason I couldn't quite reconcile that, but now I'm like, yeah, okay, fuck it.
Come
And
on.
hearing you talk about it as well, and as someone who's not getting all the references, but still appreciating, enjoying it. So I'm like, why the fuck am I worried about this? Just if I like it, I like it. So
You
yeah,
like it, yeah, sure,
yeah.
yeah. So,
So I'm gonna have to actually go back and rewrite my review of 24 Hour Party.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you said you didn't like it because you thought other people didn't get it. It was
Yeah,
too
not
neat.
didn't like it, but I was just kind of questioning its validity, I suppose. I was wondering if it was of very limited interest, which in a way it kind of is, but actually it does seem to be able to hook people in who, like you said, are keen to learn more, right? As opposed to being pushed out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting though. Yeah. I would like to learn more and then see it again because I think I'll get more of it. So
yeah, no, I tell you that Michael Winterbottom, Steve Coogan team, they've certainly made quite a lot of pretty interesting films.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Love the place, yeah. So maybe revisit them again.